All right, Mr. Batterbee?
Sir.
Good. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Miller.
30. It's there. Mr. Batterbee, can I just go back to one or two things we were talking about together before the lunch break?
Yes.
The first is the counter on which you say Firefighter Brown was kneeling and you were supporting him by holding onto his BA kit, his straps, and he was aiming the jet out of the window.
Yeah.
Can you describe that counter for us in terms of its length and width?
Yeah. Well, it seemed to be a worktop, a standard kitchen worktop, which was essentially in front of the window.
In front of and how high was it? I mean, let's start with how you think Firefighter Brown got onto it.
I think it was below the window. And when you just said aiming the jet out of the window, he was on his knees, he was crouched down, he was out the window. I was holding on to him, and the jet was aimed up to try and hit the fire. If I remember, Dan had to kind of bend down to get to here, so I imagine that it was, not really low, but not really tall. It was next to the window.
And how wide was it coming out from the window, do you think? Use the table in front of you to make a comparison, if you like.
Probably say this much.
I see. So slightly.
Again, what I would
shallower
just
than
imagine
the
is
desk.
just a standard size. I don't know, but it was big enough to climb onto, and it supported his weight.
Right. Okay. Secondly, we discussed before lunch, and you told us that there was a discussion between the BA team that was arriving, BA Team 2, and the BA team that was departing. That was you. How easy was it to have a conversation with the arriving second BA team, given that you were wearing BA masks?
Similar to when you asked about communicating with a handheld radio, you have to compose yourself. You have to speak clearly, because when you breathe, it makes a noise, and that's an obstruction. It's an obstacle you have to overcome, and you have to raise your voice and just try and be as clear as you can. But it is muffled.
It's muffled. Now, we talked also before the lunch break about communications that you'd had from within Flat 16, one on your Barry radio and one, I think, on your handheld. Is that just remind me if that's correct?
Yeah, no, I remember we discussed it, yeah.
So you remember making sending two messages by radio, yes?
At least two.
At least two.
At least two.
So taking the Barry radio to start with, that communicates you with the Bridgehead, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you remember getting a confirmation back from the Bridgehead about what you were telling them?
I could hear, but I couldn't make it out, because I could hear there was something coming back, but it was slightly pushed back to and I was hitting my helmet and trying to get my glove up inside to manipulate it, but it wasn't working. So I assumed they'd got the information that it was coming back to me, because it sounded like the length made sense that they were, because that's a common procedure. You communicate something to ECO, they will repeat back to you, but I couldn't make it out because it was dislodged. So
see if I've got this. You could hear something.
Something, yeah.
But not what it was.
No.
Right. And is this right? Just to summarise your evidence before the lunch break, you also made a second radio message using your handheld.
That's correct, yeah.
And again, was that just to be clear, was that with the Bridgehead, or was that down to?
As I said, I'm pretty sure I went through to Channel 1 at that stage, because initially my handheld radio wasn't on, because they're not intrinsically safe.
Right.
So you wouldn't go into a potentially explosive atmosphere with that on. So when I couldn't get the Barry communications, I was in the compartment. Well, I know it's now not an explosive atmosphere because we've dealt with it. And then that's when I turned my radio on, and I'm pretty sure I went on Channel 1. And then, as I said in my statement, eventually it came back to us that they were aware it was going on the outside.
And who were you communicating with at that point?
I can't even remember.
Was it Bridgehead, or
I
was
imagine it'd either be Chris or Mike, but I can't remember.
Right.
But I would have gone through to an officer outside.
Do you remember whether you did in fact have radio contact with Mike Dowden at that when you were inside?
When I was on my
flat 16?
handheld on channel 1, I can confirm that I got priority message out and I received information back that they got that message, that it was where it's like. I can't confirm who that was because I simply don't remember.
Okay.
Right. Could you please be shown the operational response report, which is at tab 8 of the documents bundle? Just want to see if I can clarify a time with you. And if you could go please to page 30, Mr. Documents Director. Thank you. And there we see 01/21/15. And just so you know, Mr. Batterbee, and to tell you what this is, this document, which I don't expect you to have seen before, is a London Fire Brigade operational response report for the first hour of the fire, which has been put together through as a result of investigation of a lot of information. The reason the time there is in italics is because it is what they call a soft time. It hasn't been confirmed. I just want to ask you, it says 01/21/15. Around this time, BA Team 2 entered the kitchen and joined BA Team 1, that's you and Mr. Brown. BA Team 1 confirmed with BA Team 2 that the fire in the kitchen is out. And then it says, BA Team 1 confirmed the fire is extinguished in flat 16, and they send a message to BAECO confirming the fire is out. Is that, to the best of your recollection, the first message you send about the fire being out? Or is it the second or subsequent?
I don't know.
Don't know.
I can't confirm that.
And did you give BAECO any other information during that message?
The message I broadcast out was that the fire was out in flat 16, but it was jumping or something along them lines. It was going on the outside, so my objective was to tell them that we had done our job in the flat, but you know it's not over. We've got this situation going on, but I would, that'd be impossible for me to know the time of when that was.
Right, and just so, and I've asked you this before, but I just want to be absolutely crystal clear. That message, that it's jumping, that you sent, did you get a confirmation back that that had been received and understood?
Again, I got something back, but it wasn't. Yeah, it was. I couldn't make it out. So that's why I then went to my handheld radio.
Did you get a confirmation back of that message on your handheld radio?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Thank you. That's very clear. Right. After you left flat 16, Mr. Batterbee, where did you go next?
So I went back to the Bridgehead, where I booked out, and I met with watch manager Brian O'Keefe, who's Golf 33 Kensington, and we did our debrief. So I explained to him that the fire in the flat was out and it was going on the outside. His brief to me was to immediately go downstairs, carry out what we call a fireground A test. So that's the process of putting a new cylinder onto our BA set, testing it, which is an A test is a standard test you do when you take over that piece of equipment to check it is indeed operational and safe, and to get straight back up there. So
Right.
that was my brief, and that was very clearly communicated to me from Brian O'Keefe. And at that time, there was still a massive sense of urgency that we need to get downstairs and get straight back up.
Right. I just want to unpack that a little bit more, because you've given us a lot of information there, which is very helpful. I just want to focus on your debrief with Watch Manager O'Keefe. How soon after tallying in was that conversation?
Booking out. Booking out, so receiving my tally back.
Yes. Tally in, I call it. Booking
probably within seconds.
Right. And you did a debrief with him. Can you remember as much as you can of what you told him?
As I've just said, the fire in the flat is out, it's going on the outside, and at that stage, again, from what I recall of that conversation, it was very fast paced, and it was just after I come out of a very hot wear. I remember him vividly saying, the plan is to go downstairs, we need all the BA we have back up here. So it's very clear of what I needed to go and do next.
Did you tell him that you had seen balls of flame on the outside falling down?
No, I told him it was going on the outside and that it was jumping up the building.
Right. Was your impression at the time that he already knew that, or was it your impression that you were telling him something that he didn't know?
My impression was that he was probably conscious of it, because I imagine he would have had contact with outside the building, because I remember him saying, I can't remember, it's difficult because I'm trying to recall a very fragmented memory, but at the time I would expect that, what's happening outside is being communicated inside, but then I agree it's a very dynamic incident. For example, I didn't know what was going on the outside, but all I remember is I told him, and he told me the plan, and the plan was agreed, and that's what we were going to do.
In your statement at page 8, if you could please go to that, you cover your debrief in the third paragraph on page 8, where you say we did our debrief with Watch Manager O'Keefe. And in the second line there, after collect our tallies, you say he seemed quite alarmed and told us that the plan was for us to carry out a fireground A test and get straight back up the tower. When you say he seemed quite alarmed, was it that he was already in a state of alarm, or was he alarmed by what you told him?
Again, I'm trying to remember back to the moment. From what I know, Brian is a very, very experienced officer, and on receiving that information, he was very clear and had a very clear sense of urgency. Okay, right, well, you need to get your BA set A tested, which is quite unusual. Okay, so normally after a hot wear, as we call it, and as per procedure, you should have time to rest and recuperate before going for another wear. To go straight from coming out of compartment to right, you have to get your BA set tested and get straight back up. That sense of urgency suggests to me that we need to get back up here, because I imagine there's resources coming on, but the job's not finished.
I understand. I'm sorry to, in a sense, repeat the question and push the point just a little bit more, but what I'm trying to get a feel for is whether his state of alarm was created by something you told him, or whether he was already alarmed. Do you remember?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Now, at that moment, during your debrief with Watch Manager O'Keefe, what were the conditions at the Bridgehead like?
Clear. Yeah, again, nothing there that would alarm me or lead, it was just, again, it was still at that point pretty normal.
What about the stairs coming down from floor 4 to the Bridgehead?
Apart from how busy it was with personnel coming onto the job, again, clear, conditions were clear. And at that point, I didn't have my breathing apparatus on, so I could smell the air, and it wasn't smoky.
Right. And what about people in the stair? You've got the BA people coming in, but what about residents coming down?
I don't actually recall vividly seeing anybody. Obviously, it was a very busy scene, but what I was looking at and focusing on was what was coming onto the job, and preparing myself to go and conduct my brief, carry out the A test.
Did Watch Manager O'Keefe tell you anything about the conditions higher up the building?
I don't remember, no. I don't remember.
Okay. Did anybody else tell you about the conditions higher up the building at that time?
No. I remember going down the stairs and...
Now, you say at the foot of page 8 of your statement, in the last paragraph, when I got outside, I walked over to Watch Manager Dowden to update him. Where were you physically when you did that?
I'd come out the main entrance, I'd turn left, facing east, and I walked towards Michael. He was outside, and the statement says what I saw.
Can I just ask you what you said to him?
Well, I went over to him to let him know that we'd done our job. Mm-hmm. We'd gone and put the flat. So I basically, he's instant commander, so it follows suit that you would go and have your debrief with the instant commander. And I looked up at the side of the tower, and I'll never get over that shock.
Just take a breather.
Is that right?
Do you need a break? Just have a minute, just a few seconds. Pause.
We could easily stop for a few minutes if you'd like to.
I think we should break, Mr. Chairman.
Just a few minutes, is all right? Just to...
Yeah, we'll break for 5 minutes. 25 past. Would you like to get the usher? You okay to go on? Okay, thanks.
Mr. Batterbee, I've only got a couple of questions on this, which I think I do have to ask you. When you came out and did your debrief or update with Mike Dowden, as you say in your statement, can you tell us what discussion you had with him?
Okay, so I came out, saw what I saw. Mike pointed up at, what we were looking at, and I was trying to take it in, and I looked directly at him, and I grabbed his arms like this, and he grabbed my arms. I said, "Mike, what have you made it?" And he said, "I've made it 25. And I thought that was a good call. So when I say 25, he'd made pumps 25. Then I looked at him, I said, "Okay, what do you need from me?" And he said, pointed to the bollards, which were kind of positioned on the corner of the east and the south face, that were locked up. And he said, "Get those bollards and get those cars out of the way to get the TL in." I said, "Okay, I'm going to do that." I still had my BA set on at this stage. So that's what we discussed.
Did you have the bollard keys with you?
I had my, again, personal set of keys, which I purchased when I joined the fire brigade. I just went to local locksmiths and bought so they're called FB keys, fire brigade keys. And I bought a set of those, and I always keep those in my pocket. That worked well because I didn't have to go looking for a set. If memory serves, it was an FB14, which is quite a standard padlock, was holding that bollard in place. So that's why I undid it, and I launched it, threw it right out of the way, and because I looked at the cars and there was no way. I considered, could we flip the cars over in a fashion to make more space? And I can't remember much of it now, but I remember my assessment at the time was there is nowhere I can get them cars to go. And again, the flipping of the cars would have been facilitated by us, a few of us getting them and picking them up and turning them over to try and make room. But I remember thinking or even breaking a window, releasing the handbrake and pushing it out the way. But I thought, well, there's nothing I can do with those cars, so it's going to have to be the bollard. So that's what I did. And then I remember at one stage I looked up and the TL was coming toward. It was in front of me. It was coming right at me. So we'd made enough space to get the TL in. The turntable ladder.
Yeah.
Can I just go back to your conversation with Mike Dowden? At that time, could you see people coming out of the building?
At that time, I was so task-focused on what I was doing. Now, let me just try and describe the scene. It was chaos, but organised chaos. So when I say organised, we were trying to, we were getting the TL in, we were doing the best we could on the ground, but the noise, I could never describe that noise. There are no words to describe the noise of the debris coming down, the pump revving, everything going on. It was hell. But I don't remember vividly having memories of seeing individuals, because at that time I was getting on with my brief.
Thank you. Can I just ask you about hydrants? If you go to page 9 of your statement, and this is a little bit further on, I think, in time, you are talking about the jet on the outside of the building. And you say at the very bottom of the page, I then heard, do you see that there? I then heard from other crews that the hydrant on the junction of Bowmore Road, this is at the very bottom of the page, and over the top of the next page, and Grenfell Road was defective. Just so that you can see on the screen, Mr. Batterbee, those two sentences, or those two parts of that sentence together. I then heard from other crews that the hydrant on the junction of Bowmore Road and Grenfell Road was defective. I heard this more than once from different people. My question, having shown you that, is, do you remember who you heard that from?
Firefighters.
Could you be specific about names?
No.
About stations they came from?
No.
Roughly what time of the night, roughly, did you hear that?
Well, to put this into context, that hydrant we were looking for those who had the same, read back and have a look, but it was after Danny and I had made an attack with an individual firefighting jet, and it was after I'd met up with Steve Collins to try and get the monitor to work. So I imagine it was a good few, it was a few minutes after I'd, got the bollards out of the way and stuff like that.
Right.
But I couldn't tell you the time.
No.
I don't know.
And how soon do you think after the arrival of the turntable ladder?
Well, again, I don't know what time the turntable ladder got on scene. The first time I saw it was when I was moving the bollards out of the way. But after performing that task, I'd say, no, well, I can confirm it was after. I don't know the time, I'm sorry.
Oh, all right, okay. Now, did you have any of your own experiences about defective hydrants? Did you have problems with hydrants on the night?
Yeah, in my career.
No, on the night.
Oh, on the night. So can you perhaps ask that in a different way? You said
Yes, of course.
experience about.
Yeah. So on the night of the Grenfell Tower fire, did you yourself personally experience any problems with the fire hydrants?
No, because on that night I didn't ship a hydrant.
You didn't ship?
Ship. So I didn't. Our hydrant gear, our method of plugging into that main, I didn't do that on the night. So no, is the answer.
Is the word you use the word shipping? Is that an expression?
Yeah, a fire brigade time. Sorry,
No,
forgive me.
Yeah. And did you ever learn what the problem with the hydrant that you'd heard about was?
No, but they did get it to work, as my statement says.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hold-up was.
Now I want to ask you, if you turn on in your statement to page 10 about fire survival guidance calls and the system of communication.
Yep.
And you pick this up at the very bottom of that page. You referred to doing a fireground test. Sorry, I've just noticed something I should ask you. Perhaps I should, just a little higher up that page. Forgive me, Mr. Batterbee. If you go up and look at the second last paragraph, where you say, I sat for a few minutes recuperating.
Yes.
And then you say, I was so shocked at the way the fire was escalating. I remember looking over to the base of the tower and seeing Watch Manager Dowden. He was still wearing the Incident Commander tabard. I remember thinking, why was he still in charge? Can I just ask you, what prompted that thought? Do you remember?
Well, when I came downstairs from, as we've discussed, I spoke with Michael and he had confirmed that it was now a 25 pump fire. And also, remember I'd done tasks on the fire ground, I'd completed my A test, and then I tried to get back up there, and I was ordered by Watch Manager Brown from Battersea, and I've mentioned in my statement that he had a large number of wearers under his command, and he ordered me to go and sit down. So what prompted that thought was, there are lots of resources here. Now, a watch manager will generally be in charge up to a 4, station manager from a 6, group manager from an 8, and a 10 and above, as I've said in my statement, would be a much higher level rank. So that's what prompted that thought.
Yeah, thank you. So coming back to where I wanted to direct you, which is the last paragraph on page 10, you say, after staying there for what felt like a very short time, and that's outside the building, you say a watch manager came running over asking for volunteers to help with FSG information.
That's
watch
correct.
Manager was Paul Sadler, H22, Lambeth.
Yep.
And you say you went along with him and firefighter Broderick from G36 Hammersmith. And then you say, Watch Manager Sadler explained that we were receiving a high number of FSG calls. These were coming through CU7. You see that?
Yes.
Do you remember when CU7 arrived?
No.
Okay. Do you remember that any fire survival guidance calls had come to the incident ground through the initial command pump?
Not that I was aware of.
Right. And then you go on to say, he explained, I think that's Sadler, explained that we needed to record and deliver this information to the Bridgehead. Now, can you just explain to us, because you go on in your statement to do so, but can you summarise for us the system that then operated, which you were involved with?
Okay, so just to confirm, so not to describe the FSG policy, but to discuss the system that we were running with on the night.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, exactly that. So he explained we'd record and deliver this information to the Bridgehead, as my statement says. Or my understanding of the brief at that time was CU7 command unit were probably quite overwhelmed. That was my thinking, and we were going to support their efforts and do exactly what we said, record that information and get it to where it needs to go.
Did you speak to anyone on CU7?
No.
How does the information go from CU7? Well, let's start with the control room. Just run me through what was happening at the time.
Yeah.
So fire survival guidance calls are in progress between the caller and the control room.
Yes.
And then the control room sends a message to CU7.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
And
No, well, that would be the standard procedure. Would be to that risk critical information would go to the command unit designated to deal with fire survival guidance calls,
right.
which on the night I believed was CU7 because that's where we were told we were getting that information.
Right. And did you know what was happening inside CU7?
No.
Okay. So how does the fire survival guidance call information then come out of CU7 on the fireground?
At the time, like I said, we were set up on the bonnet of a car with a forward information board, and I can only guess that was being communicated to Paul Sadler from CU7 by means of a handheld radio, because we went on to Channel 3 to do the FSG stuff.
So you went on to Channel 3 to do the FSG stuff. So does that mean that you were communicating with CU7 from the place where you were with the forward information board by radio on Channel 3?
Well, at that time, I'd just come over and joined them, so I wouldn't be able to say that for sure. But that's certainly how we progressed throughout the incident.
Okay. And where was the forward information board physically located at that time?
We were on the bonnet of a car.
Where was the car?
Okay, so can I grab my map?
Absolutely. Now, the map you'll
If
find...
you could pull the map up on the screen, I'd tell you.
Exactly. That's CJB2. It should be in tab 2B. Yes.
Is it possible to zoom in? Zoom in again. Okay, so you see the corner bend of the road, which is slightly obscured by the Grenfell Walk or the Lancaster West Estate.
Yes.
It was parked on the same side of the road that was next to the grass area on that bend.
So Grenfell Road.
Somewhere on Grenfell Road, on the same side on the same side of the road that had where the grass park was. It was parked up there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's sort of the best description I can give of where it was.
Okay. Well, if the trial director can move the cursor around, perhaps, and go to the corner of the walkway to the east side.
Okay, so go to the right. Keep going. Drop down. Yeah. If that's Grenfell Road,
Yes.
somewhere around there it was parked. So there was a line of cars parked up, and it was just one of those cars.
Right. And where was CU7? Do you remember?
CU7 was on Grenfell Road, parked up on the same side as, I think it's Barrington Walk, so one of the finger blocks.
So a little further to the south, under where you've written garage area.
This is, if you zoom out again. Yeah, just kind of where I've written garage area, that block there,
Yeah.
which is Barrington Walk.
Right.
It was just opposite. Yeah, it's just next to the finger blocks.
Right. I see.
On Grenfell Road.
On the left or the right side?
On the left side, so on the same. So you had the pavement here, and you had. Oh no, hold on a minute. No, it couldn't have been, because. No, it was on the opposite side, but it was on Grenfell Road, and the crew cab was facing towards, like down Grenfell Road, towards the tower.
Right. So it's parked on effectively the wrong side of the road.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So-
And how far from the bonnet of the car that you were working on the forward information board on?
Well, as you can see on the screen, not a great distance, but.
Can I just ask you a question? Would it be normal to have a command unit that distance from a high-rise building with a fire in it?
Well, as we discussed earlier, the access and egress to Grenfell Tower was not great. A command unit will generally park slightly further back from the scene of ops, so that basically TLs, other appliances can get that little bit closer. So to answer your question, yes, it would follow suit that it wouldn't park right at the base of the tower.
Okay. So you join, is this right? You join Watch Manager Sadler at the car,
Yeah.
and he's got the forward information board.
Yeah.
And then what do you start doing?
Well, like I said, the next key thing I remember is he detailed me, as per my contemporaneous notes and my statement, to report to the Bridgehead, report to Watch Manager Louisa De Silva, Golf 84 Chelsea, and to record and make a note of all the information they had at the bridge, and to bring that back.
And you bring that back to where? The forward information board, or to
Yeah,
CU7?
to Watch Manager Sadler.
Right, and what would he do with it?
Would you mind if I just refer to my notes, just so
Yes, of course.
just timeline-wise, I'm just trying to, because we've jumped about a bit. Yeah, so got to Louisa, get the or the bridge rather, get the information, come back and cross-reference it to make sure that we, see if there were any differences, if we needed to add more information, and just check that that we're both on the both seeing the same thing.
What were you taking to Louisa at the Bridgehead?
I didn't take anything to Louisa. I went up to her, or I don't remember taking anything to her. I went up to her and I saw her information board, if memory serves, and as you can see in one of my exhibits, a notebook.
Yes, I'm going to ask you about that. That's
Yeah.
CJB3.
Yeah.
So, well, let me go straight to that then.
Okay.
If you could look at that. it looks like a piece of paper torn from an ordinary pad.
Yeah, so we carry notebooks on the fire ground.
And where did you fill in this page as a blank piece of paper to start with?
Sorry, what's the question?
Well, when you wrote well, let me just ask you this way. Did you write down this list?
This is my writing, and I wrote this list.
Where were you when you wrote this list?
I was at the Bridgehead, which I think was still on the second floor. And I was kneeling down next to Watch Manager De Silva, looking at the information that they had.
Okay, so you were copying this from something?
Yes, from I believe it's a forward information board.
At the Bridgehead?
At the Bridgehead, yeah.
Right. And just helping me with what it contains, you've got flat, number of people, and then the floor. Is that right?
Okay, so on the first one, flat, I believe that's either flat 113, 8 people, 14th floor.
Mr. Batterbee, can you just wait a moment?
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Trial Director, it's CJB3. We need to have it on the screen so that everybody can see. It's CJB3 and it's MET 000015731. So perhaps we could just go over this again. This is your writing. You say this represents information that you copied down onto a blank piece of paper in your notebook.
Yes.
At the Bridgehead. Well, it was manned by Watch Manager De Silva. And you've got the flat, and it looks like 113, 8 people, 14F, 14th floor. Can you just confirm that this information comes from, I think you said, the Bridgehead, but what is it on the Bridgehead that you saw from which you copied this?
It was a forward information board with the list of the information that I have on here, on that board. So
Right.
my objective was to simply take a note of what they had, go back to Watch Manager Sadler and show him this to make sure that what we had was indeed corresponding with what they had.
Right, okay, so starting with what's at the Bridgehead, forward information board, could you just describe it for us?
Yes, a forward information board is, if you imagine just say this big acrylic piece of plastic with some posters on it, and it's used for, you can sketch out an incident, but it's also got a casualty information poster on it, which you can use or utilise, if you like, for FSG to do the FSG recording on it.
And do you know who had written the FSG information that you saw on the forward information board onto it?
No.
Do you know where the information had come from that had been written onto it?
No.
Did you ask anybody at the Bridgehead where they were getting that FSG information from that you were copying down?
No.
Okay. So then you copy it down as we see here. We could see ticks. When did you... Are those ticks your ticks?
They're my ticks.
When did you add the ticks?
Okay, so copied down the flat, and then on the other side, the floor. And I placed the tick against the ones which she informed me she had directed a crew to.
Right. Okay. I'll come back to that in a moment. So you then, what happened next with this piece of paper? Did you leave the Bridgehead?
I then returned to Watch Manager Sadler.
At the car?
I think we were still at the car at this point. I can't be entirely sure.
I should ask it different. I don't want to suggest the answer. I suppose the question should be where was Watch Manager Sadler when you went back to him?
I think I'm going on very broken, fragmented piece of memory, but I'm pretty sure it was at the car. Because as I've gone on to explain, we did move to a more sheltered area late time. But I can confirm I went back to Paul Sadler.
You went back to Paul Sadler. And what happened to this piece of paper at that point?
I got it out, and we started doing exactly that, cross-referencing.
Cross-referencing to what?
To the information he held.
And what did he have?
Well, he had information on a forward information board, sort of flat numbers and floors. I don't remember entirely, but that's the role we were performing.
And do you know where the information on that forward information board came from?
Again, I would just presume Charlie Uniform 7, CU7.
CU7. Yeah. And do you know who had written that FSG information onto that forward information board? Was it Sadler or was it somebody else?
I don't know.
Is there any reason why you had that forward information board on the bonnet of a car as opposed to being in or right outside CU7?
Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Yes. Is there any reason why Watch Manager Sadler was running a forward information board on the bonnet of a car and not at or just outside CU7?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
Would that be, I know not a lot was normal on that night, but would that be a normal procedure to have CU7 forward information board Bridgehead?
At the time, I was so task-focused on what I was doing and trying to help that I didn't really question it. And I have to say, I've never had to deal with fire survival guidance information before in my career, so that was the first time I'd ever done it.
I understand. And when you went back to Watch Manager Sadler at his forward information board and gave him this information, what did he do with it?
Okay, so again, we've jumped forward a bit, so I'm just trying to memorise it. So we got back to Paul Sadler, cross-referenced the information, and then, as I go on to say in my statement, a decision was made that we needed to move to a more sheltered area that was quiet, and then the decision was made we needed to start recording that information individually on the correct forms, the control information pad. And then at that point, I imagine that because it didn't stop coming, the information kept coming. So we got those, and then we were running those into the Bridgehead.
Okay, let me there's a lot in what you've just said, and it's extremely useful. Would you need another break, or can I ask a few more questions about what you've just explained to me?
I'm okay.
You're all right, okay. You said you were cross-referring the information on your list at CJB3 here, which is on the screen, to what Watch Manager Sadler had on his forward information board. What did that involve? You've got a list of numbers, flat numbers, people and floors and ticks. What did the cross-referring involve?
Comparing what I had gathered from what the bridge already had to what we had outside, and try and identify if there were any differences and where there were, record as necessary. So that was the objective, to make sure that we had the same information. Because I'm conscious that inside the tower, maybe they had gathered more information through perhaps people coming down, people approach, information they've got from crews. So we needed to, my understanding of the objective at that time was to simply make sure we knew what we had. Then we moved to a calmer area and we start collating that information onto the FSG forms and get them into the bridge to make sure they get dealt with.
Right. Just before we move to those forms, I am going to ask you about in just a second. Can I just ask you about what information was then fed back from the forward information board you were running with Watch Manager Sadler? Did you inform CU7 of the fact that BA crews had been dispatched by the Bridgehead to all those flats which you'd ticked?
That's not a task I performed. So Watch Manager Sadler was running it, and I was basically running around for him, for lack of a better expression. So at that stage, Watch Manager's in charge of that, and I'm assisting. And an example of that is when I went off to go and find the forms. An example of that is when I ran back up to the bridge, ran to the bridge initially to get the. So I personally didn't relay any of that information.
Okay. Do you know whether Watch Manager Sadler relayed any of that information?
I don't know. You have to ask him.
Okay. Then moving on to the forms that you're referring to. In your statement, you refer to them as, I think, 6871s. Just so I've got an idea, we can all understand the form you're talking about. Is this the form that's a form?
Sorry, can I just pause you there? Apologies. I'm looking at this statement and I'm not recognising it. It says it's the statement of Michael Dowden. I don't know how that.
Yes, that's not I don't know what you've got there. That looks like Michael Dowden's statement you shouldn't have in front of you.
No, it's on the table I was referring to because I was trying to.
Don't worry, you're not going to need it.
No, because I just thought I'd make you aware that was on the table.
Yes, thank you very much. Your file is the blue one, I think.
Yeah.
Can I ask you just to be shown on the screen? Policy 790, FSG. First question, is this a policy you're familiar with?
Yes.
Okay. Second question, could you please be shown Appendix 2,
Yeah.
which is on internal page 8.
Yeah, I recognise that form.
And is that the form that you're referring to in your statement when you call it a 6178?
Yes, so the control information, we call it FSG pad.
FSG pad.
Yeah.
Now, from your experience, just understand this form, where are they kept?
They're kept on all frontline appliances in the crew cab. Between where the driver sits and the officer in charge sits, there's a small cabby hole which we keep all our forms and folders in. And that's one that we generally keep near the top and well marked, because en route to incidents we can be contacted by control to relay information to us. So that's where it's kept. Yeah.
Okay.
They're also carried on the command unit.
Right. So, okay. And they're in quadruplicate, I believe.
Yes.
Can you then explain what you did with these forms?
Yeah. So when I think it was like the first 3 were written out, by this point, just getting in and out of the tower wasn't an easy task. It wasn't a question of walking from here to the door. When I said it kept getting worse, words don't do it justice, how crazy the scene was. I got those forms, I tucked it into my tunic, and I was on the way to drop them off to the Bridgehead.
Right. Just pause there.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm going to allow you to carry on because I
Yeah.
want to know. But when the forms that you were carrying, were they filled in with information?
Yes, yeah.
And
Transferred off of the information board we had.
I see.
Yeah.
And that information was new information, was it, that had come from the command unit?
I can't confirm that, but it was, again, just to contextualise it, so lots of information is coming in, we utilise the FIB to capture that quickly. And now it's a process of getting those individual forms filled out, and that information came off that FIB, but I can't confirm if that was information we had there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or new, or it was just information off the FIB.
Right, okay. Information off the FIB. And then you went to the Bridgehead, you've just explained, with some difficulty with it.
Yeah, I was assisted by a member of the police.
Right. And how many runs do you think you made to the Bridgehead with information forms like this?
Throughout that night?
Yes.
I'd love to know.
Okay.
I'd never know, but it never stopped. it was continuous until the daylight hours, where I go on to explain other tasks I performed.
So just in general terms, the basic features of your movements, you go from the place you were filling these forms in, the forward information board,
Into the lobby.
into the lobby.
Now, at times that was through the original door, and not long after it was then through, as I've explained in the statement, through improvised openings that we had to make because it became too dangerous on the south side of the tower to get in and out.
And then you'd go up to you'd go to the bridgehead.
Yeah, can I just refer back to my contemporaneous notes just to help me with my timeline in my head? So yeah, so to answer your question, taking them from the bin area where we were sheltering from the commotion and also the water coming down and the debris, we were taking those forms into the tower.
Right, the bin area. Sorry,
Yes.
I might have to ask you to go back to your map. Do you remember where the bin area was?
Yeah, I can describe it to you. It's basically under the walkway of the Lancaster West Estate.
Right.
And we were improvising there was sort of biffer bins, big wheelie bins, and we were in that area there, working in that area there.
Right. And the information that had come to you in the bin area had come from where?
I believe Charlie Uniform 7, Command Unit 7.
Okay. How had it been communicated from CU7 to you in the bin area? By radio or by these pieces of paper?
I can't be entirely sure, but I would imagine both.
Both.
But I guess the answer, I can't confirm. I can't confirm that.
Do you remember receiving these control information forms from CU7 at the bin area?
I don't remember that specifically. The only handling of the forms I remember is once they were written out, I would take them into the tower.
Right.
Yeah.
Who was helping you? Oh, sorry. Who was involved in this exercise at the bin area?
Firefighter Broderick from Hammersmith, myself. These are just the people I remember. There were more people there, but I can't remember who it was. Watch Manager Sadler, Watch Manager Coltress, now Station Manager Coltress. And I remember at times people sort of just being very careful to make sure this process was done properly and calmly, but with a sense of urgency, even to the point whereby just we're on our knees and at one point sort of very close to the ground, and everyone got handed the sheet, and I said I'll take the first 3, and everyone started filling it out. So yeah,
All right.
that's I'm just trying to paint the picture of what that scene looked like.
Your involvement was at that stage to run control information.
Essentially a runner, yeah.
To the bridgehead. And at the bridgehead, when you arrived at the bridgehead on each occasion, what did you do with the control information form?
Okay, so I have no recollection of getting to the bridgehead with any of them forms. The first, sort of the next key thing I remember is being stopped by Watch Manager Glyn Williams, who stopped me. I said, no, I'm taking it up to the bridge. And he explained, no, what we're going to do is we're going to record the information here in the lobby area, and we utilised the wall. And he was writing up. He had already gathered a lot of information on that wall. Now, I don't know where that information came from, but he had gathered a lot on the wall. And as I said in my statement, this worked well because the traffic on the stairs was very, very busy. And it was, again, I'm trying to paint the picture. It was a very dynamic and chaotic scene. And also it afforded us lots and lots of room to record the information. And he explained that we'd come there, record it there, and then the information would go from there up to the bridgehead.
So, I see. So you essentially were communicating between the bin area with the information coming in from CU7 there to essentially the lobby where the information on these forms was being written up on the wall. Yeah,
and as I said, just to build on that, I I feel the bin area worked well in some respects because it was very close and it cut down our travel time to get in,
Yeah.
which again wasn't a travel time of just being able to walk into a building.
No.
It was difficult to even get into the building. So then, yeah, get into the building, record it there, and then, as I said, then from there it would go up to the bridge, which I believe at that stage was still on the second floor.
And how would it go from the ground floor, where it was written, I think you said on the wall,
Yeah,
up to the...
I think there were
Bridgehead.
runners. I think there were runners. But
Okay. Do
again,
you remember who they were?
I can't be 100% sure.
Do you remember who they might have been?
No.
Any names? No. And moving the forward information board that you were operating by the bin area to the bin area, did that make it further away from CU7? Closer to the tower?
I'd
but
say
further away?
relatively equal distance, but closer to the tower, in shelter from all the water and the debris, and in a place where we could even hear ourselves talk. And that, it helps us to go to that quiet area.
Is there any reason why well, let me put this question this way. Were there any radio operators in CU7 that you knew of who were receiving fire survival guidance call information from the control room?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you know of any reason why CU7 couldn't communicate directly with the Bridgehead by radio?
Again, I don't have that information. I don't know.
You don't know. Is there any reason why CU7 couldn't communicate directly with someone with a fireground radio in the lobby at that stage?
Again, I don't know. You'd have to ask the crew.
What was your general experience of radio communications at Grenfell?
Channel 3 was very busy, so I went on to Channel 3 quite early in the incident, which was a dedicated channel for fire survival guidance, and it was busy. Yeah.
Right. What about using other channels? Did you experience difficulties using other channels?
With respect to the amount of traffic or how well they worked?
How well they worked?
How well they worked. Again, as I've described, I didn't go above the fourth floor, and I've described when questioned in my statement, sort of issues we commonly have with radios. But on the night, that the key thing was the amount of traffic.
Right. Just going back then, just one or two more questions on this topic. Going back to your exhibit CJB3.
I was going to say, can I take a break?
Yes,
please?
of course you can. I'm sorry, I got so interested in what you were saying, I forgot
Thank
to
you.
ask you.
Just before you go, Mr. Millett, how much longer do you think you may be with this witness?
Probably another 10 or so minutes.
All right.
I think that I've gone longer. I have, I'm afraid, overstayed my welcome. So.
No, it's not that. It's just that I think we've all been sitting here for over an hour. It might be a good idea to have just over a 10-minute break
It's a good idea.
for everyone.
Yes, very good.
All right.
We've been here for an hour already.
Yeah, I know. Time flies, I'm afraid. You go with the usher, and we'll come back at 3:20. So you've got just over 10 minutes. All right, Mr. Batterbee? I think this is the last lap. Yes, Mr. Levitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Batterbee. Can I just ask you to look at CJB 3, please, in your statement bundle, which is your list. And I want to ask you about the ticks. Now, you said that those were ticks you put on there, recording the information you got from the Bridgehead watch manager De Silvo, that crews had been dispatched to those flats and floors.
Yeah.
My question is, based on that information, how would CU7 know that crews deployed to a number of these flats have come back?
I don't know how that information was passed, or if it was, I don't know.
Similar question. How would CU7 know that crews dispatched to those floors had left residents on those floors and not managed to rescue them?
I don't know the answer to that.
Was there a system to establish the result of the deployments that you ticked on that document?
I don't know.
Who would know the answer to that? Do you know?
I would suggest that the command unit crew might be, they will have information.
Do you know who they were? I mean, we could find out from the documents, but from your recollection, who were the individuals you were dealing with in CU7?
I don't have a recollection on the night of who was on that machine. You'd have to look.
Okay. Did you have any personal interaction with anybody on that machine during the night?
I'm trying to think. Not until the the one I remember is I remember seeing, I think it was Tony Peckham outside of C7, but this is when I say the following day, just the following morning.
Right.
And I remember at one stage, as I've explained in my statement, I went to CU7 to speak with somebody to as I said in my statement, to get the SM, but I don't remember who those people are.
And if deployments of BA crews to these flats and floors did not result in successful evacuation, how would further deployments take place to residents who still remained in those flats and on those floors? Do you know?
Can you repeat that question again? It's
Supposing
quite a long question. Yeah.
It was a bit. So you tick these flats and floors on this piece of paper indicating that BA crews have gone up there. How would further deployments take place to residents who had been left behind in the event that those deployments had failed?
How would it, or how did it?
How did it?
I don't know.
How should it?
I would imagine that, like any team goes to perform a task, if that task isn't complete, then another team would be allocated and briefed to carry out that task.
Do you know whether that happened?
I didn't witness that. I didn't see that happen.
Do you know whether there was a system at the Bridgehead for redeploying crews to flats and floors where there had been an initial failure of evacuation?
No, not that I know of.
Okay. I'm on the last topic here, Mr. Batterbee. Can I ask you to look at your witness statement? At page 13. And on page 13, at the near the bottom of the page, in the last but one paragraph, you say, "I remember when I had just finished passing some forms to Watch Manager Williams in the lobby, we were met by firefighter Lawson, G28,
Yes.
who had just come down from the tower. He passed us 2 flat numbers that I believe were on the 18th floor.
That's correct.
And informed us that there were people inside. I wrote this down on a piece of paper, and Watch Manager Williams wrote this information up on the wall. We passed that information straight to Watch Manager Watson, G36, who I believe took it upstairs to give it to the bridge."
That's correct.
I've read you that in full because I just want to ask you 1 or 2 questions about that whole paragraph.
Yeah.
Do you remember which flat numbers you were past?
No.
Do you remember the names of any residents?
No.
Do you remember what Firefighter Lawson told you about the 18th floor?
My two vivid memories of that is I remember Greg coming to me and telling me, and then the next key thing I remember is I remember passing that information to Paul Watson, and I remember him walking away from me back towards the stairs to the bridge. That's what I remember of that.
And who's Greg?
Sorry, apologies. Firefighter Greg Lawson, Golf 28 Wilson.
Do you remember whether there was any discussion about whether to deploy further firefighters to the 18th floor?
I don't remember any discussion. As I've said, I remember Greg coming to me, and I remember getting that information to Paul.
Do you remember what Watch Manager Watson was going to say to the Bridgehead? Did you find that out?
I didn't find out what the result of that was, because I'd passed that information to him, and I was confident that would go to the bridge.
You were running messages, I think, from the bin area into the building. I think you said earlier for most of the night, if not all of the night. Two questions. First of all, do you remember whether the Bridgehead moved at any time during the time you were doing that from the second floor?
As I said in my statement, I remember at one time it seemed like they were pulling wearers down, and everyone was coming down to the lobby area. I mean, we kept on going with what we were doing, but I remember that happening. But that's it.
And do you remember whether there came a time when the fire survival guidance calls that you were involved with running into the tower stopped?
So the fire survival guidance calls of our efforts going into the tower,
Yes.
we never stopped. When that sort of task came to an end was reason why I say that, trying to contextualise it. I was informed at one stage during the night, and it was still dark, by firefighter Ferguson from Chelsea, that callers were now being advised to make it right, to get out if they could. But we didn't stop. We kept on going with our efforts. Yeah, so we kept going until, like I said in my statement, I got to the point where, I moved on to a different task.
Thank you. Would you just, Mr. Chairman, would you give me just a moment?
Yes, of course.
Mr.
You're right.
Yeah, I'm okay.
I only have one more question,
Okay.
literally one more question, which I've been asked to ask.
That's fine. That's fine. It's
So,
okay. Yeah, I
which
want to
should
keep.
just ask you.
I want to keep going.
Is that all right? Just one more question, and that's if you can have a look at your statement, page 13, second last paragraph. You refer to meeting firefighter Lawson, who'd just come down from the tower. Do you remember what discussion, if any, you had with firefighter Lawson?
I remember he came down and he explained that there were still people up there and that he couldn't bring them down. And I remember him vividly coming up to me and telling me that information, that, you know, that there are still people up there. And then again, like I say, the next key thing I remember is handing that piece of paper to Watch Manager Watson and seeing him walk away. And
There's a piece of paper. Now, can I just see if this works? Can you go back to see JB3, your list?
yeah,
Which should be put up on the screen, and it's on the screen, Mr.
yes,
if you want to see it. There at the bottom, it says 18th, 153,
yeah, I
154.
can see that.
At what point? Well, was it you who added that information, or put that information onto that piece of
That's
paper?
my handwriting. Yeah, only I would have wrote on that.
Do you think you put that? When did you put that information onto that piece of paper?
I can't even recall what that there refers to.
Does
But
that,
it would have been after all the cross-referencing initially would have taken place with Louisa de Silva, because looking at it, you can see it's not in the same, but I couldn't be certain as to what that refers to. I don't remember.
does that addition to your list have anything to do with the conversation that you had with Firefighter Lawson about the 18th floor?
It could have been, but I remember that I didn't show him my notebook or clearly didn't give him that because I still had that piece of paper. I remember giving him a separate piece of paper with information on it.
Right. And would that have been in the form of the 6178?
I don't think it was.
Okay.
I don't think it was. Or it might have been, again, I can't be sure, but I remember giving him that information.
And have you any idea what Greg Lawson did with that information?
Well, he passed it to me, and then I passed it to Watch Manager Paul Watson with the objective that it would go back up to the bridge.
I meant Watson.
Sorry, yeah.
It's my fault.
I don't know what happened to that information after that, no.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions for Crew Manager Batterbee. Crew Manager Batterbee, thank you very much for your evidence today. I just want to say how grateful I am to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'd reiterate that. We're really grateful to you for coming to tell us what you can about what was obviously a really distressing experience. And I think everybody in the room will understand how difficult it's been for you to describe some rather painful memories. So thank you very much, and your evidence will be very useful to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, when you're ready, you can go with the usher. Well done, thank you. Now, Mr. Billett, what's next?
What's next is, who is next? Is Mr. Brown, Firefighter Daniel Brown.
Yes.
I'm told that he's keen to start, and I'm equally keen not to lose an afternoon.
I agree.
It may be, though, we would benefit from a very short break, just to make sure that he's ready.
Everything's settled down.
And can I ask the chairman how long we would sit for this evening?
Well,
It's been a long day.
I would normally not want to sit beyond about 4:15,
Very good.
because although the witness won't have been giving evidence for very long, everybody else in the room will have been sitting here for quite a long day.
Yes. Right.
So I would like to try and rise by 4:15. I'm willing to go on beyond that in order to finish a topic.
Very good.
But I think we all ought to regard 4:30 as being a pretty
cut-off.
hard deadline.
Right. Well, I may be able to get through quite a bit in even that short.
See how you go.
Let's see how we go.
So I'll rise now. Do you think 5 minutes? Is that
5 minutes, isn't it?
5 minutes.
Well, can I say 10? quarter to 4. It's not for me, but there may be other people who may need longer.
All right.
But I sense resistance.
Well, only because the witness who's waiting to come on, presumably is waiting and
But I
doesn't
don't
need
know.
a break.
All right. Okay. Well, it's 5 minutes.
So let's say 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
If it needs to be longer, just tell the usher and I'll wait.
Very good. Thank you.
Otherwise, 20 to 4, please. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Millett. I think Mr. Brown, is it?
Mr. Brown.
He's just about ready, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Good afternoon.
Yes, could you
I'll swear what it
take
is.
the oath or the
Yes.
affirmation, please?
If you'd repeat after me, please. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly
I do solemnly, sincerely and truly
declare and affirm
declare and affirm
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, I gather you've been waiting all day to give your evidence.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry we kept you waiting so long.
That's okay.
You obviously prefer to stand.
Yes,
but
please.
If at any stage you'd like to change your mind, of course feel free to do so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, Mr. Millett?
Good afternoon, Mr.
Good
Brown.
afternoon.
Could you please give us your full name?
My name is Daniel Richard Brown.
Thank you. First, can I thank you very much for coming to give evidence to the inquiry. It is very much appreciated by the inquiry team. My questions, and I say this to all the witnesses, my questions are intended to be short and simple, but if you have any difficulty understanding them or hearing me, then don't hesitate, please, to ask me to repeat the question or put it in a different way. If you feel you need a break at any point, please just let us know. Well, this afternoon I think will be a short afternoon. Could you please take your statement, which should be in the bundle in front of you, at tab 3A, and its MET reference is MET 000-10867. And you should also have some contemporaneous notes in there at tab 3B, which are DRB Exhibit 1. Yes?
Correct.
And those are MET quadruple 05251. And then there are two further exhibits to your witness statement. Exhibit 2 should be a map in tab C. Yes, and the MET reference to that is MET 000-15746. And then Exhibit 3, DRB 3, a plan, which is MET 000-15745. Is that there?
Yes.
Yes. Have you read your statement recently?
No, I haven't.
Right. Did you read it when you completed it?
Yeah, I did, yes.
Right. And at that time, were you satisfied that its contents were true?
Yes.
Thank you. Have you discussed your statement or your evidence with anybody before coming to the inquiry today to give your evidence?
No, I haven't, no.
Thank you. You say in your statement that you joined the London Fire Brigade in 1990.
1991.
1991.
Yeah.
How old were you when you joined?
I was 20 years old.
20 years old. And you've been an active firefighter since then, have you?
Yes.
Could you give us a summary of your career since 1991?
I joined what was the London Fire and Civil Defence Authority back in January 1991. I spent just under 6 months training at Southwark Training School. From there I did a year's probation, and then after 4 years I took a number of tests and basically I did a 4-yearly, it was called then, and that upon passing that I was then deemed qualified as a qualified firefighter. I think the following year I completed my motor driver's course, and I've always been posted to North Kensington, and I've worked there for my whole career, 27 years. Always on the Red Watch.
Always on the Red Watch?
Always on the Red Watch.
And in terms of your level, your training level, you say that's competent.
Correct.
What does that mean?
Well, when I became competent, it's actually called qualified. But I suppose that's semantics. So it just basically means that I was deemed that I'm a qualified firefighter. I've undergone a number of tests, and that is a continuous program where you're forever doing drills and you just do an ongoing process where they're continually monitoring how your performance and how you're performing, and if they identify any issues, then they'll work with those, and that maintains your competency.
Right. And when was the last time before June 2017 you were assessed for your competence?
I think it's just an ongoing process. I don't think there's a specific, this is your test day. It's just an ongoing process with everything you do.
Yes, I see. In terms of training, can you tell us what the most recent training before June 2017 you received?
Well, it would be impossible to say specifically what type of training. You're doing training for everything, continually, be it desktop classroom study, or drills in the yard, or sometimes you'll do an organised exercise out on the ground somewhere. You have special risks on your ground, so sometimes you'll focus on those, such as we have Wormwood Scrubs Prison on our ground, so we'll focus on organising exercise there. It helps us familiarise, get used to what we're doing, practices everything, and we're just always ready from doing those things.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Can I ask you to be shown, please, page 27 of your statement, and the third paragraph on that page. You say in the last 3 sentences in that paragraph, I have previously received training, was last year at Hammersmith. This is called Back to Basics training. I went through setting up bridgeheads and similar things. I just want to ask you about the Back to Basics training course. First of all, was that training course for the whole of the North Kensington Watch?
It was, yes.
You say last year, and given that your witness statement was signed in 2018, do you mean 2017?
I think we meet. It was pre-Grenfell from memory, but I could not give you a specific date or year. It's about 2 years ago.
Okay.
It's really hard to remember because we do so much. It's really hard to give specific dates on anything, to be fair.
And can you give us an idea about what the Back to Basics training course involves?
From memory, I think the Back to Basics was put out for the whole brigade, obviously not all at once. And so you were tasked to go to a station when you were on strategic resource. You'd meet up with a number of other stations, and then you would basically do the training programme, which is basically going back to basics. It's in the title. And I think that one was about high-rise procedure.
So that one, the Back to Basics training?
Well, there's been more than one. There was a previous one a year or 2 years before that, which was at Paddington.
Right. When did the Back to Basics course come in?
I think this is the second one that I've done, so in history terms, it's relatively quite new.
Quite new.
From my history.
Do you know what prompted the London Fire Brigade to start delivering a Back to Basics course?
I do not know, no.
And you mentioned high-rise training in the context of the Back to Basics course. Can you elaborate a bit more?
So it was specifically about high-rise procedure and dealing with high-rise incidents. So we'd do a practical, and there's so many stations there, you'd end up doing it in a number of, it would be happening 3 or 4 times within the day. A group of 4 or 6 would do the drill, then they'd go off into the classroom, the next 4 would come along, they'd go in the classroom, and it's just routinely like that. So it was practical and then up to the classroom.
Right. Did the Back to Basics course contain anything about how to deal with a multi-compartment fire in a high-rise block?
It always does, high-rise. One of the basic things in high-rise drills and procedures and everything is a covering jet. Should a compartment fail, you've got a covering jet to stop that fire from spreading above the flat where the compartment's broken. So absolutely, yes.
Right. Only at the bottom of page 27, if you look down at the foot of the page, you see, you say, our previous training has always worked. We rely on the building's design to do its job.
Yes.
And compartmentalise the fire. We do not have training on what the process should be if compartmentalisation fails?
That is a wording. That is, in my mind, real fire training. So it's all training that we do is imagination. So you have to imagine. So as much as you're standing there putting a jet above the window, there's nothing there. So you've got to imagine that actually that fire's travelling above. So it's not real, if that makes sense. It's imagination. That's most training. Imagining it's on fire, imagining there's people in there, imagining something's not working.
Right.
Everyone's imagination is different.
Okay. So in this imaginary world of learning
Training,
about...
yeah.
Training. I'm sorry, don't mean to diminish its importance, Mr. Brown, but what do you learn about what you should do if you see compartmentation failing in a high-rise block?
Well, just the fact that you're putting a covering jet and you explain why you're doing this.
Right.
From there on, so you can stand there and think, why am I doing this? Well, they explain why you're doing it, because you're looking out for that compartment to fail. But of course, in training, that compartment never fails.
No, and you talk about a covering jet. That would be on the exterior.
That's correct, yeah.
Why do you think training about compartmentation failure would only concentrate on a covering jet on the outside?
I think it could be, I would imagine it's down to resources, because you can't have fire engines off the run everywhere. We need to be on call 24 hours a day. So it would be difficult and very labour intensive to then add additional crews to what you would normally do, is send another crew up to fight the fire inside that compartment, and so on and so on. It's very labour intensive. And we're an operational fire service. You just cannot afford to have that amount of fire engines off the run.
Did your training contain anything, and when I say your training, I mean either in the Back to Basics course or even more generally, did your training contain anything about exterior fire spread on the exterior of a building?
Only in that should the compartment fail at the window.
And what did that training tell you?
Literally, again, covering jet above.
Is that it?
Well, you have to imagine, again, it's down to imagination. This window that's broken, its compartmentation could be on the 6th floor. There's not a lot else you can do outside. If an aerial's not there with your training, you can't utilise that aerial, so the answer is do what you can on the outside of a covering jet, and if an aerial's not there in the real world, you just get up inside, up to the next floor, because you always fight the fire inside out.
Let me be a bit more specific.
Okay.
Did you ever receive any training on what would happen if the exterior of the building ignited?
I think you need to be more specific with regards to what is the exterior part of the building, because it becomes an imagination thing. Is it a brick building, a concrete building?
Did you have any training about cladding?
No.
Did the training provide any guidance to you as to what the appropriate response would be to fire spreading vertically up the exterior of a building?
No.
What about laterally across the facade?
No.
Were you aware from your experience about Lakenhall House?
No. I mean, we did a basic desktop package that's theory, and no, not really. There was the training on it wasn't great. No, in my opinion.
Right. Let's just see if I can.
You need, I think, if you're not at the incident, it's really hard to gauge from the other side of London exactly what was entailed at this incident by what's written on a bit of paper.
Okay.
It's very hard to understand what is said, what is meant.
You say that you did a basic desktop package. Was that a basic desktop package
Well, it was
Lakenhall House?
It was a training package delivered by my watch manager.
Right. When was that?
I do not know.
And was it Lakenhall House specific?
It was, I think. Again, I can't be 100%. I don't know. We have so much coming our way. It's really hard to be specific.
Do you remember any training materials, slides, handouts, matters of that?
I don't know.
And you say it wasn't that great. What wasn't great about it?
It's just very hard because literally most of the training that we receive is just text written on a bit of paper. It's just written out, printed out. It's given to the watch manager. There you go, deliver that. So London's a very large brigade. It's huge. And you've got 4 watches per station. There's there was 100, I think there's 103 stations now. It's a massive task to undertake, and the fire service really struggles with its budget, so it delivers what it can the best possible. It's just, to be fair, it does actually quite a remarkable job, in my opinion, but it could really do with a bit of investment. Really.
Have you ever heard of a fire at Shepherd's Court?
I was actually ordered onto it, but on the day I was standing by because there wasn't enough personnel at Battersea because they were short of a driver, I think. We were ordered on when it was made pumps 20, but again, once I got there, I think they dealt with the incident, so I didn't really get involved.
So you weren't involved? You didn't?
I didn't get involved. By the time we got there, because it's quite a long distance from Battersea to Shepherd's Bush, it takes quite a long time to get there in the middle of the day. There's a lot of traffic, so they extinguished it, and so we weren't required, so I think we then left.
Do you recall ever receiving... Well, let me just give the date. You'll remember that Shepherd's Court was, I think, 19th of August 2016.
Sorry, could you repeat
Shepherd's
that?
Court, the date, August 2016. You don't remember?
No.
After that date, just to give you a time frame,
Okay.
do you remember being trained on the lessons that could be learned from the Shepherd's Court fire?
No. But I don't think it's that uncommon what happened at Shepherd Bush Fire, because the window, from my understanding and conversations, because I think my watch was ordered onto it from North Kensington at the time, and naturally we just talk about what happened because we like to learn things and improve all the time. It's a constant thing. And I understand that it broke out of a window, and as much as it went up and started to affect the window before the next window, it didn't actually break in because you need that window to break down and then the fire to then grow in that compartment as well. And that's quite a fair process for that to actually happen. And expect that room to be able to hold that fire for a certain length of time before that room would eventually flash over and force enough flame up to the next window. So you like to think that each time it's going up in a compartment, you'll have time to get crews in and deal with it before it reaches a point of flashing over up to the next one. That is my understanding.
Yes. Okay. Were you ever given any training about how to conduct a mass evacuation of a high-rise tower block?
No, we weren't, because the whole evacuation, we can't... When a fire happens, if it has an alarm system, that is the evacuation point. By the time we get there, the evacuation point is lost. There is no chance to evacuate. The whole point of having an evacuation procedure is have an integrated fire alarm. We don't do evacuations. We do assist and rescues. There is no evacuation procedure we can do. It's impossible. You're asking people to come down through stairs that could be smoke logged. They might not make it. That is just giving up on them. We have a process, and we will get in there, get them out. We can't just leave them for a free fall.
When you say it has an alarm system, do you mean a whole building alarm?
The whole building, integrated alarm system, so it tells everybody there's a fire in a building, get out. Before the fire has time to grow and develop and take hold. Because once that happens, smoke travels anywhere. You could have a system where it's sucking air out of that room and pushing it somewhere else. You don't know. We don't know.
Can I just ask you about whole building alarm systems?
Yeah.
You've been in North Kensington as a frontline firefighter.
Yes.
Since 1991.
Correct. Yeah.
In your experience, are there blocks, high-rise tower blocks in North Kensington which have whole alarm systems?
With regards to residential tower blocks, no, although Grenfell used to have. Grenfell used to have an integrated fire alarm system with a concierge.
Yes. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit?
So on the ground floor, there used to be a concierge, and there was a fire alarm panel in there, and I believe there was an alarm system. I can't 100% because this is a long time ago, but I believe there was a head on every lobby on every floor, and used to go to many fire alarms there where it was. Sometimes it was actually a fire, or it could have been the bin room outside that's drawn in smoke inside. There's lots of different reasons why that alarm will go off. Sometimes the fires, not always. Could just be burnt cooking, could just be a bit of dust, but the whole building would actuate all at once.
What would happen when
The idea is that everyone evacuates. That's your evacuation point. There's a fire in a building, get out.
In your experience, did the whole of Grenfell Tower ever evacuate?
Some did, some didn't. Since, I'll be honest, since Grenfell Tower, I think most people are taking fire alarms a lot more seriously than they used to, and people are evacuating like we would hope they would do when the fire alarm goes off. If you don't have a fire alarm, you don't know. You're not aware of what's going on.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get to the facts here. So, until what point in time do you remember Grenfell Tower had a whole building evacuation alarm?
I do not know the answer to that. I don't know what year. I would imagine they removed the smoke alarm system the same point they moved the concierge, but again, I don't know the date.
No. And when you say, and I asked you whether there were, in your experience, mass evacuation from Grenfell Tower, you say some did, some didn't.
Absolutely,
Was that on some occasions or some people?
It's everywhere, across all buildings, across the whole of London. Part of working on the front line within a fire station is there's a real struggle for resources. I think we're nearly 300 firefighters short right now. It's really hard to maintain pumps on the run, particularly in summer. So many are coming off the run during the summer. It's really hard to maintain a level of fire cover. It's a real struggle. It's hard, I won't lie. But I'm sorry, I'm venting and raving. I've forgotten the question.
Well, it was my fault for
I'm just angry and passionate.
Well, let's try and keep to the facts, because that's what we're here to examine.
Yep.
And just in terms of facts, you said a minute ago, some did, some didn't, when I asked you about evacuations
Yes, so this happens across London,
well,
so the fire alarm
just,
will go off.
Can I just ask you the question?
I'm sorry.
The question is, when evacuations happened at Grenfell Tower prior to the integrated alarm being removed, was there mass evacuation or not?
I could not tell you because I do not have any way, or anybody has any way of knowing how many people were in that building at that specific time. Right. Some people may be in, some people may be out. And short of going through every single flat on 24 floors knocking on the door, you would not know the answer to that.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, do you want to finish?
I was just going to say what you do, because an integrated fire alarm system, on the panel, it will light up which area where the smoke detector is actuated. So it will say zone 3. Next to that fire alarm panel, the zone would be indicated what floor and what flat, or what floor it would on. I would imagine with Grenfell, because it was more lobbies rather than individual flats, and then you know exactly where to go. You don't need to travel the whole building. You go to where that smoke detector is actuating, because that's telling you where the fire is.
And during the time, casting your mind back, during the time when this integrated alarm was present at Grenfell Tower, do you remember what the standing advice to residents was in the event of a fire?
When there was an alarm system in place?
Yes.
I could not remember. I could only guess, and I'm not going to do that.
Now, in your statement, you say, and this is, again, page 27, second paragraph, in the second paragraph there, I've previously been on a section 72D visit to Grenfell Tower. Mm-hmm. It looks from that as if you'd only been on one. Is that right? Or had you been on more than one?
That's just the way it's worded. No, I've been on hundreds.
Hundreds?
Hundreds.
Right. Since what year?
Well, it used to be called a 11D. It's now a 72D. I've been doing 11Ds, 72, or what is now called a 72D since July 1991, which is when I went operational from training school. So you 26 and a half years.
So in the 26 and a half years of being on Red Watch at North Kensington, how many times do you think, just guess, I suppose, you'd visited Grenfell Tower on a 72, on a 12D and then a 72D visit?
I could not ever give an answer for that. I do not know. Very often. You would go there naturally anyway, just for calls, or there'd be some reason to go to these places. I cannot remember how often 11Ds, but I think back then, again, I'm really having to go back. I think it commanded a fire certificate. So I think that fire certificate commanded us, or the building, to have a visit once a year. And it wasn't just a familiarisation visit, which is pretty much what a 7.2D does. What it was a fire safety enforcement visit with it to ensure that the building was meeting its fire regulations and to make sure that the fire systems in place are there, and not just making sure they're there, but we'd test them, we'd look at them, we'd physically, and if you had we would test everything. We'd go up to the top. Well, first of all, you'd arrive, you'd look for the hydrant, you'd make sure that the access, if there was a fire gate, you'd make sure that was clear. You'd make sure if there's yellow lines, which is a keep clear, you'd make sure that no one parked on there, and if there was, you'd go to the concierge and say, sort that out. Do not let people park there. Then you'd go to the fire lift. You'd make sure it had the fire lifts in place. You'd make sure it works. You didn't just look at it and say, there's a fire lift. You'd then say, this is how you test this. Let's check this fire lift. This is part of the fire safety enforcement. You'd actually physically put the key in and operate the fire lift. And that would work. You'd then go up to the top floor. You'd look at emergency lighting. You'd look at fire doors. You'd make sure the self-closures was there. And not only would you make sure the self-closures there, you'd test it. Excuse me, I need some water. You'd test the self-closures worked.
Right. It sounds as if from that answer that this is something you would do in the distant past but didn't do anymore.
We don't do it anymore because it's all been taken away. It's all been privatised. It's no longer our responsibility to make sure that these fire enforcement and fire certificates and these fire safety things in place, it's not our business anymore, apparently. It's been all privatised.
Okay, we're perhaps straying away from some factual questions. What was the last visit, or when was the last 7.2D visit that you paid to Grenfell Tower?
The last time I went to Grenfell Tower was, I think the dry riser had come off the run.
What does that mean?
Because I think, so the dry riser, it was basically non-operational because they were extending it. I think it was on the third or fourth floor. Again, I can't remember.
Other witnesses have said third floor.
I think it's the third floor, and they're extending it down. So basically, it was going to be inoperational for a number of days while they extended that down. And so I think we went there to check that out and see what their plans were, and then we went back again. But I'm not sure that we carried out that visit or it was another watch, but I know our watch went back to make sure that that was completed, located the new riser inlet, and basically, okay, thank you very much, it's back on the run.
Right. Mr. Brown, forgive me, I know you're fresh, I can see. There are others in the room who may be less fresh, if I can put it that way. Mr. Chairman, it's maybe a convenient point to break. I am going to go into some detail on the evidence that's just been given, but it may be better to do that first thing in the morning.
Yes, all right. Well, there you are, Mr. Brown. I'm sorry we're going to interrupt your evidence so soon, but there it is. We've reached the sort of time of day when we do that. Can I ask you, please, now you've started giving your evidence, not to discuss your evidence or any other aspect of the matters we're dealing with until you've finished completely, which will be sometime tomorrow.
Okay, smashing.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, what time are we going to resume? You want to resume?
May I ask that we start at 9:30?
9:30. Do you mind being here, please, to start at 9:30?
Okay.
Thank you very much. You go with the usher, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.